Welcome to Refused Flank, a wargaming podcast exploring the intersection of competitive excellence and narrative storytelling potential. Yeah, well, we can just vamp some intro ideas, I suppose.
Welcome to Refused Flank. I'm Grant.
And I'm Cam.
And here we talk about wargaming, both miniature and board. Just wanted to introduce ourselves here a little bit. I've been in the hobby for, I'm going to say, really hard for about 15 years. Really started jumping in around 2010, but before that, I really got introduced in like Heroscape era, for people who remember that game being new. It was more of a board game, hex encounter, miniatures, pre-painted stuff. That was in like 2004. I remember getting the master set when it came out as a gift, and then playing it once and never playing it again. And then I found out in high school, I had a buddy who had the same thing, and then we played it as older individuals, probably in the mid to late 2000s, and got really hooked on that for a couple summer vacations. And that colored me to learn about Warhammer, both fantasy and 40K in the late 2000s. And then I was scared off by the pricing. Eventually jumped into War Machine Mark II because that came out right in 2010. And I was hoping that would be a little cheaper alternative. The starter set was certainly cheaper. So kind of jumped in there. And I started out as a pretty competitive guy. Was really trying to win all the time. Was less concerned about painting and narrative and stuff. But over time, and meeting you, Cam, and kind of developing our own group, and playing other sorts of games and getting more into board gaming as well, and then kind of war games specifically, I kind of appreciate more narrative-based stuff and enjoying that almost more than the other side in some respects. So yeah, that's kind of me. Yeah,
I think you bring up a good point there at the end, that combination of both the narrative and the competitive nature of things, and that often seems at tension in this hobby, and that's something we want to explore on this podcast. So I think that's cool. We've both come from probably different sides of that, but have met in the middle, and I think learned from each other already, and I hope we'll continue. But
have you ever been to a tournament? This is a genuine question I've never asked you.
I went to one Age of Sigmar tournament when I was just getting back into wargaming, and had finally found a local place that was doing wargaming, and that was all people were playing. So that was what I was going to play.
Yeah,
that was how I got opponents. And I lost the first two games very poorly, and then they needed somebody to take a bye on the third game. And since I was by far in last place, they asked if I would be willing to do the bye, and so I didn't even play the third round. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Okay. I feel bad, man. They should have asked one of the mid guys or whatever just to get a free win or whatever. But, okay. Interesting. How'd you get into this, I guess, wargaming?
Yeah, I think it was a long time ago. I was trying to think back through this, and the memories are all kind of jumbled now in terms of chronology. I can't quite remember the order in which these things happened, but a few key things where are you familiar with the old game Weapons and Warriors?
You know what? I am not.
How about Cannons and Catapults?
I think I've heard of that.
Okay, so I don't know which one came first, but Weapons and Warriors, it's this thing where you have these actual mechanical ballistas, catapults, whatever, and you can launch little orange balls.
Yep.
And you're trying to like hit a castle and it knocks the guys over, whatever kind of thing. But it comes with all these little infantry figures, little like halberdier dudes. And after playing that in the tactile way that you're supposed to, we just started wanting the infantry to do something, because they just stand there to get hit by cannonballs and rocks. And so at some point we started inventing ways to have them move around the board and fight each other and things like that. So that was formative at some point in my life. I was into Lord of the Rings really early. I'd read The Hobbit and Fellowship of the Ring by the time I was in 5th grade, and that's when the Fellowship of the Ring movie came out. And so obviously coming out at that really formative time for me was super awesome. And at that time, Games Workshop came out with their Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. Yep. And so got into that. That, again, it's kind of vague in my memory, but I went to a Games Workshop store sometime in the years surrounding that, and this was in Buffalo, New York, so like an hour north of where I grew up. So once or twice a year, my family would do a day trip up to go to the mall, and there's a Games Workshop store in there. So walking in there for the first time, especially in that era, it's just a spectacle. There's a couple of different tables with amazing terrain, amazing models on it, people playing these games. So that was just like, wow, this is so cool.
This is real.
Yeah. I remember the first time we were in there, the employee pulled my brother and I in to show us what was going on, have us roll some dice, and the cat's just getting into the notes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't remember much. I remember there was like some kind of fort on a hill that had Empire troops in it. There was some orcs and goblins attacking it, and my brother rolled the dice for the Hellblaster volley gun to shoot at the orcs, and it blew up.
Was this in 6th edition?
It would have been 5th or 6th.
5th or 6th,
yeah.
Okay.
So somewhere in that vicinity. And he rolled and it blew up, and I just remember that being wild that could even happen. And the guy was like, this is going to impact the game that's going to be played tomorrow, which is this campaign game that's been going on. Wow. And now that this blew up, that'll have this impact. And so just, that idea that, whoa, this game could have an impact on another game. All super cool. So that was all happening. I remember my dad was kind of pushing my brother and I more towards the Lord of the Rings game. I think he thought the Warhammer stuff was a little too creepy and dark. Evil, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so he ended up getting us the Fellowship of the Ring starter set for Christmas sometime around then. And that really kicked off our hobby journey. I think I'm 2 years younger than my brother, so he definitely was like more understanding the rules at that time than I was. And we both obviously can't paint worth crap at that age, but we're just trying, putting things together, having these battles, that sort of thing, having a great time. And most of my childhood then was spent playing that Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. And so did that for a long time, ended up getting into 40K in high school a little bit more with some friends. I'm from a really small town, so there was no local game store, so there wasn't a lot of community. It was just, what friends can I rope into doing this? Right. I ended up having a couple that got into it and actually like bought their own stuff and that sort of thing. But mostly, it was my brother and I kind of making it all happen. But yeah, I guess the closest thing to a gaming store we had was an electronics boutique. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yep. It's been a while.
Yeah, it turned into a GameStop eventually. I guess they got bought out or something. But they actually were selling these Lord of the Rings miniatures in their store, which was fascinating.
I've seen current 40K stuff in disc traders before, which I always find interesting.
Yeah, it's like enough of an overlap that it makes sense. They don't really want to fully stock.
Will buy this plastic, and they see the pretty picture on the front, and then they buy it, and they open it, and they're like, what? I got to put it together.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah. I also played a ton of RTS games as a kid.
Yeah.
So super into that. I remember also trying to like design my own games. So trying to make like a war game that was an RTS that has base building and all this, which is obviously insane to try and do once you start thinking about all the things that just happen in the background in those kind of games that you'd have to then micromanage. But yeah, that little bit of design flair kind of went throughout a lot of different things, trying to make an RPG that we could play because we weren't allowed to play Dungeons and Dragons, things like that. So all these different things of trying to bring customization and interesting new ideas so that we could just play with our toy soldiers. Right. There's a lot of campaign gaming going on at that time. The Lord of the Rings system had a Mordheim-esque play style, that they called Company of Heroes is World War II.
Yeah, that's that
game.
RTS.
Battle Companies, that's what it's called. And so, that was our first like dabbling into that crossover between sort of narrative and wargaming, where all of our guys had names. They were doing amazing things on the battlefield. I remember we would like paint little medals on them when they did something particularly cool, like that orc just killed that Minas Tirith captain. Like, that's crazy. He needs a promotion. And then we would do that. I think I'd mentioned this before, but we designed this whole zombie horde fighting game that we could play at the end of a day of gaming, and so we would each have our own character and we'd be blazing through all the zombies and things like that. Obviously Left 4 Dead 2 was huge at that time, so that was probably
got
very
a lot of hours
inspiring.
on Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 2 with the boys.
So that's a lot of my childhood was really like, that was one of my main hobbies, was doing a lot of this stuff, building terrain, getting really into it. I was fascinated by being able to like convert your miniatures. I love doing basic head swaps and hand swaps and things on my minis. All the Lord of the Rings ones were pretty much single pose, so you had to really cut stuff up to make them different. But yeah, tons of fun. I got out of gaming a little bit in late college and young adulthood just because I didn't have opponents to play since I'd moved to a new state and took some time.
Same, by the way. And that's actually how we met.
Yeah, exactly. Viewers. Yeah, you want to tell that story?
Oh, okay. Well, Cam was actually a TA at the school I was going to for college in film. And basically, I think I saw a sticker on your laptop that was this was in, oh man, I don't know, I'm going to guess like 2012.
12, 13, something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So, and you had the Imperial logo or something, and it said the Emperor Protects.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, 40K guy, I know what that is. And I'm pretty entrenched in War Machine at this point, going to tournaments and playing against my cousin a lot. He was my primary opponent, kind of like your brother was for you. Me and my cousin really we would play each other all the time. We did a lot of online stuff too. I don't know, people, you've heard of Vassal.
Oh, yeah.
Virtual online squad leader is what it started as, but now there's everything for it.
I didn't know that's what it stood for. Interesting, yeah.
Virtual advanced squad leader is what Vassal, I think, originally was built for.
Yeah.
Did that, and then I think I was just like, hey, you like 40K? And you're like, yeah, cool, man. And I'm like, well, I don't really play that, but I play this. Do you want to do it? And I remember I gave you a rule book. And then I met you at the duplex, which isn't far from where we sit now.
Oddly enough, it's like a block away.
It's a block away, which is kind of funny to think about. And then I remember you grilled pizzas on the back, and we played Trollbloods versus Khador, because those were my two armies. And I kind of just made it happen. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if you have a lot of memory of the game specifically. I don't either. But then I remember afterwards we watched Doctor Who or something.
Nice.
And then it was like, yeah, and then I don't know. And then frankly, I think I switched my major, didn't really see you as much, but we were like friends online and Facebook and stuff. Yeah. And then what reconnected us, I guess coming more into how this came about, is for me it was COVID and a little bit 2019, end of 2019, I was like, man, I've been out of kind of the hobby scene. War Machine had gone into Mark III. I really didn't like Mark III as much. I think that was kind of universally accepted. War Machine kind of went through a downturn. Some might disagree, but I won't get into that. Maybe we can talk about that later on another episode. Yeah. But I have thoughts. But loved Mark II, and then 2016, 2017 really fell out of it. Part of that was as I was getting much more serious with my girlfriend, et cetera, et cetera. Just coming out of college.
Wife, though.
Now
so
wife.
Worth it.
So it worked out. It was worth it. But 2019, 2020 is happening, and I'm like, man, I haven't really been doing any of that, but I still got the itch. And I used to be the guy who'd be like, 40K, that's that random game. That's like, because during like when War Machine Mark II was really taking off, 2012 era, that's when I would say 40K was in its dark age. That's like 6th ed dark 40K, 7th ed 40K, where it's, in my opinion, maybe others would disagree, a really bloated mess.
Yeah, before the full revamp that turned it into modern.
Right. Yeah. So 7th ed 40K is just like a hodgepodge of different, like the core rules are kind of, you could see 3rd ed in there a little bit.
Yeah, the threads are still there.
They've stapled and bolted all these systems on to where there's unit types for chariots and stuff in there, and it's just crazy, and it's this bloated mess, and you need to have all these explat books or whatever, expansion books, to even know what's good. And it just looked like a mess, and it looked super random and expensive. So I kind of had this elitist attitude, like, nah, War Machine's the skillful game. There's not, whatever, young guy. But I'm reevaluating, I guess. Long story short, said way too much there. And I'm like, maybe I kind of want to get into that. Maybe I'm kind of sick of the formulaic, like, I know by the end of turn 2 who's going to win this game if average rolls happen.
Yeah, and I remember hearing people to like say the other side of like, well, War Machine's just like, people just want to play with flat terrain because it's so precise that like nobody wants to have the...
I fit that mold. We would literally cut pieces of construction paper and it was green. We'd be like, this is a forest. When we cut blue, we'd be like, that's a lake or whatever. And we'd literally play flat terrain. Because, it was more about the game than the lore. We kind of liked the lore. All the characters were named, but it was definitely so far in the rear view mirror. We never did anything like what we do now. And have been doing, which I guess I keep delaying. But where we're doing campaigns and trying to have narrative threads tied through it and have characters that are named that we made or whatever. Right. That was just like, no, I'm playing Butcher 1. I didn't call him Orsus Zoctavir. I'm like, I'm playing Butcher 1. I'm running Black Dragon, Iron Fang Pikemen, not because I like the lore behind them, but because they're the hotness for Khador at the time. And I spam Iron Flesh on them for crazy defense and armor, and then I beat people into submission, etc., etc. And that's all it was about. And it's like, well, can you answer this unit? No? Okay, well, I'm going to beat you. Stuff like that. But I didn't want that anymore because I guess it was burned out, and I didn't want to be like, oh, this is all that it's about. I saw other opportunities. You mentioned video games a lot. I kind of been a gamer in that respect too. Fallen out more recently. I was pretty competitive in shooters a lot, and I played a lot of Smash Brothers, StarCraft 1, things like that. I was really into those in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And but it was always competitive. But the problem was I was always the guy in the group of friends who took things really seriously. I guess people would call me sweaty or whatever is what the kids would say. And I just was like, no, I'm going to do this. I want to be really good at it. So I would be the one who, hey, we're going to get into Smash Melee. I'm like, okay, I'm playing Samus. And I would go home by myself. I remember at Michelle's old duplex. And I would literally just grind out tech skill by myself against the computer. And then it became to this point, though, where I was just better than everyone to where I could beat certain friends 2v1. Wow. I remember my bachelor party, we went to a gamer bar, actually, and they had a Smash Melee set up there. And you can ask Stevie or some of my buddies about this one day. But I was pretty inebriated because it was my bachelor party. And I remember being like, oh, man, they got Melee, let's go. And I remember I beat my friends, and then one of not a barista, the bartender was like, oh, I'll play you or whatever. And I'm like, okay, and I'm like, and I beat them too. Wow. And I remember being like, oh, man, I was feeling myself. I like paused the game, which is super disrespectful, by the way. Don't do this if you're listening. In my head, I was trying to be respectful. Like, do you actually want to keep playing? We can be done. Like, but that's super disrespectful. So shouldn't have done that. But I was feeling myself. But that was always me. But I wanted something else from this. Again, I keep dancing around it. And then we kind of saw each other online in a similar Facebook group. And that's for what we're probably going to get into in later episodes. But Warhammer Fantasy 6th Edition on Facebook has got a pretty good following. And I just saw you post something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know who that is. And then you're like, oh, hey, and I'm like, we should do this. And then that March 2020, so right when COVID hit, everything closed down, so I had some time off. I remember I got a box of skinks from my wife, and then we painted that up, and then we met, and then I think that first session, I'm like, okay, yeah, I got the little fix, I'm like, I want to do this
right
more.
Now the itch is itching again.
So that and then that spiraled into where we are today. And along the way, I had a lot of board games and stuff, and I'd like to talk about those too on this podcast. But really, for me, what's really brought us together has been the miniature wargaming, and specifically Warhammer, both fantasy, I would say mostly, but also a little bit of 40K. Older editions, though, notably. We're not playing current editions.
Much to some of our friends' chagrin. But.
Yes, some people are like, man, let's play 10th. And I'm like, I want to in some ways, but I'm also like, I don't know if I want to get on the rat race is probably the wrong word. But.
I don't know. That feels like a pretty accurate word. I feel like if we were going to, I think I've said this before, but if we were going to play something new, I'd want to just play one-page rules just to break it up.
Right.
Do something simple and then go back to some of the older
something
editions.
That's complete, that's done, that can't be changed in errata. And then if we want to change in errata, we can just do that.
Yeah. And there's something about a dead or finished game system like Warhammer Fantasy 6 or 40K 4th that because it's not actively changing, it feels like permission to do what you want with it and be more homebrewy with it, which feels dumb to say because of course you can just do that with any game you want, but it just feels easier to do when it's an older game like that.
Right, because people who are going to be involved are kind of the understanding that, hey, there's not going to be a new Splat book that comes out or whatever. And
that'll totally shake it up.
That shakes up the meta, or hey, what do they do now? It's chapter approved. Is that what that's called? Where they
I don't even
rebalance
know.
points like every year? Which
Yeah.
sounds like, you know what, 10 years ago, Grant probably would have been really excited by that. Like, wow, they actually care now. Yeah, balance. But now I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to keep up with all that. That's
Yeah.
a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So unless you're like really playing a lot, and I'd say we play fairly consistently. We definitely go through a little bit of lulls, but we do a pretty good job. Definitely played
Yeah.
more in the past 5 years than I have. Oh, well, I don't know. I played a lot in the early 2010s too. But but this has been a renaissance, I guess, for me. So, but yeah, I guess, what do you think about where we're at right now?
Yeah, well, I'll give just a little bit of my run up to this point as well.
Sure.
That period of time where I just didn't really have anything to play with. I was still painting a little bit and still building some terrain just because I love that creative aspect of it and things like that. But yeah, it was, I think also then just looking for, okay, well, if nobody wants to get into the wargaming hobby with me, then maybe I just need to find other adjacent things. And so trying to find either skirmish games that were a lower barrier to entry that people might play with me, or doing more miniature-based board games like Imperial Assault or something like that.
Okay.
And so I was trying to scratch that itch in a variety of ways. I actually designed a whole game system to be miniatures agnostic. You can use any of your minis, so I could use all my existing minis that I had for all these different things, and did that for a while. But yeah, I still just wanted, like, I just want to play like a big battle. And I remember, I'd buy a friend some models and be like, hey, you want it? And then they just wouldn't really bite, and then just kind of fizzle out.
Yeah.
But yeah, during that time, I think I just started exploring a lot of different things and realized how big and vast the world of wargaming actually was outside of what I had grown up playing and things like that. And that got me into a lot of other systems. I did continue playing with my brother throughout that time at holidays or whatever, and we would get together. We would get a game in and that sort of thing. But that led us to doing some Chain of Command, World War II gaming. We would play our skirmish game that we were working on, that sort of thing. When I finally started meeting people and figured out where I live now, like, there is a gaming store, there are some people that play. They were all playing Age of Sigmar, like I mentioned earlier, so I got into that a little bit. But really wasn't enjoying it, and I was dusting off my old Warhammer Fantasy miniatures to play it, so I had nothing that was actually meant to be played in Age of Sigmar. It was all the stuff that, like, technically had rules, but was garbage.
Yeah. They're like, hey, you should buy the new stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so that didn't really feel good to be playing, just getting beaten all the time, which, I mean, was partially because I had a crap army and partially because I didn't know what I was doing. But I, through that, still managed to meet some other people who were more interested in those ancillary game systems. Found some guy not too far away that was, like, trying to do a really cool Necromunda campaign with all his own lore and, like, full converted war bands and things like that. And so got super into that with him. And that was in 2019, leading right up to COVID. And so that kind of cut that off. I'd also met a couple other guys, found somebody who I played Ninth Age with a couple times, and that was like, hey, I can use my old Warhammer minis and it feels like they're doing what they're supposed to do. But he was a competitive player and really good as well, so he also just trashed me every time because he was, like, very much, like, knew all the rules, knew exactly how to play, was very precise in how everything was happening.
Ninth Age kind of has that rep, doesn't it? That was the one that was, like, by tournament fantasy players for tournament fantasy players.
Yeah, how could we advance 8th edition into being that tight tournament thing? Met some other guys, started playing things like Saga with them, which I love. That's definitely one of my favorite miniature war games. And that group, they're just open to playing all sorts of stuff. So we've done Dracula's America, we've done Warcry, trying to think, just lots of different things. So that's been a lot of fun. But then, COVID hit. Everything shuts down. We connect on that Warhammer Fantasy Facebook page just because I just needed an outlet to be like, look, I'm painting stuff. Does anybody think it's cool? I think it's cool. And then, I was like, oh, you're still around? Cool, let's hang out. And so once COVID had calmed down enough that it was like, oh, we could probably get together with the windows open and masks on and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, we start playing and doing all that. And it's really satisfying to get these models on the table, have a reason to be painting whole regiments of troops. Was really nice to feel like there actually is going to be a game I'm going to play with them. And at that point, I was, again, resurrecting these old armies that had old paint jobs or not painted because I never finished them, kind of a thing. And so it was really exciting to be uncovering those again and diving back in. But I think since then, we've grown our group of middle hammer players, I guess we could call ourselves, to 6 or 7.
School. Yeah, no, 6 to 7, I'd say. Probably a really solid core of 5.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And then, yeah, a couple others that will show up for different things.
Pop in, yeah.
Yep, and so we've done 2 fantasy campaigns. We've started building some 4th edition 40K armies.
Yep.
And we're about to launch into a campaign with that. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun just seeing people get excited about it, to have enough people where it feels like there's multiple opponents, so you're not just playing the same army every time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
some
been
diversity.
Really cool.
We've got a lot of our fantasy guys, because we've done 2 campaigns, have more than one army. So we've played like a lot of different matchups, even amongst just those 6, some people. Mm-hmm. And we're pretty cool about, because we don't play at a club, we don't play at a game store.
Right.
So people just share armies. So it's pretty common. I know we just did this recently,
where
one of mine is Lizardmen and you have Empire, and we just swapped them. Mm-hmm. And we've done that, not just us, but other people will kind of move around if people want to try something new. We're very like, oh yeah, no problem. Why don't you play Chaos and I'll do, whatever, Bretonium, etc.
Yeah, or a new person getting involved, they can just take an army already painted, play it, see how the whole thing feels, not feel like they're starting from scratch necessarily to even dip their toes in.
Right, for sure. And that's, I think, helped with recruitment, for
definitely.
Sure. Because we're like, oh yeah, you can just show up and we'll just give you a full force. And then, hey, then they get the bug and they're like, oh, this is cool. And then they look at what we, what's kind of happened is they look at the armies that we didn't have yet and they go, okay, what ones are these like? And then they start that. So it's been cool. But yeah, no, I'm excited to talk more about all sorts of both miniature games and kind of everything, just in emergent narrative and mechanics, kind of everything here. I guess, what's our view for this cast? I kind of just went over it there, but do you have any other thoughts to add?
Yeah, I think, like you said, we want to keep it kind of open about what specifically we're going to talk about. We're going to start with Warhammer Fantasy 6th Edition, just because that's what we've been playing a lot of, just wrapped up a big campaign for that. And that's going to, so we'll start there, but I think, like you said, we want to, whatever we talk about, kind of bring these 2 perspectives of the competitive excellence, competence aspect of how can you play really well, really understand your army well, play with good tactics, that sort of a thing.
And appreciate it.
Yes, not just for its own sake, but also then bring that narrative perspective of we're doing all of this and understanding all these mechanics and being good at them because of the interesting story that it's going to tell when we play this all out on the battlefield.
Right.
I think one way that I like to think of it, for me, wargaming is collaborative storytelling, but the rules exist to help make sure that that story plays out in a mostly plausible way, so that it doesn't devolve into like when we're kids and you're like, well, I have a missile launcher. Well, I have an anti-missile launcher shield. Yes. Well, I have an anti-missile launcher shield nuke. And then it's just this escalation. And so wargaming rules help keep a cap on that. Only plausible things typically will actually be able to happen because of those mechanical guardrails.
Yeah.
And you should be able to play to win and play to have your side do the best, but hopefully while you're doing that, keeping in mind like what is cinematically happening, how is this story evolving.
Otherwise, we might as well just have a bunch of cardboard bits we're pushing around and the flat terrain with War Machine Mark II and all that. So, and
I will say the spectacle of it is at least half the enjoyment for me. I love building terrain. I love coming up with narratives for my armies, names for all my characters. So it can feel like these little stories are happening. And I love that term you used, emergent narrative.
Yeah.
That idea that there's not necessarily a goal at the outset. We don't have a storyline mapped out, but as things happen on the table, it just arises out of that. And then you see these cool heroes coming out and doing these awesome things. And then those are the cool things you remember to talk about.
Exactly. It's like, oh, that crazy thing happened. And it's not just, oh man, I rolled 3 4s and a 1. It's, no, it's, my Scar veteran stood up to the Chaos Lord and he somehow beat him in a close challenge and rallied the Saurus warriors against those Chaos Chosen or whatever. It could be something like that. And it's just kind of reframes that whole thing. And you remember that. And you get a little bit of a visual. It's not just, and I think it helps with people who can get frustrated, etc.
It's helped me.
It's like, well, and I don't think anybody's immune to that, myself included. It's just like, especially when because you're like, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z, or whatnot, but then it's like, oh man, I got unlucky, I failed my stupidity check or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's so annoying. But it's just like, well, just remember, hey, those are stupid dinosaurs, those cold ones or whatever, right? So it's like, they were just kind of wandering off. Maybe one bit at each other, and just kind of feeding that into that, I think, makes it more acceptable and kind of more fun for you and your opponent, really.
Yeah,
So
it makes it focus on the group activity of it. It's not just for you. It's not just for them. As a phrase you've used before is that the dice tell a story, and you just described that really well, I think. But I loved the example that you used, is it's not just the bad dice mean my guy did something stupid.
Right.
When I roll bad, it actually can be indicating that your guy did something really cool.
Right.
And being
Maybe
able
he
to
parried everything. Yeah.
And so being able to see that and like flip that on its head is really helpful, I think, like you said, for both players' enjoyment. And I think it's a skill to develop to try to get to the point where you can start doing that on the fly. It's usually harder for me to do it on the fly. After the fact, I can think about it and be like, oh yeah, I could interpret that way. But sometimes when, you're getting those bad dice rolls, it can just feel really frustrating in the moment. So I think, it's a skill that you can work on, that you can develop. I think one way that's helpful to do that for you and others is to just voice some of those things.
Yeah.
When a really bad dice roll happens, articulate the narrative of it. And that can just, I think, help calm nerves, calm anxiety.
And it almost kind of, in a way, this is going to sound weird, it almost trains everybody else to do the same.
Exactly.
Trains is probably the wrong word. Encourages.
Yes. It invites the spirit.
Right, because, it's really easy if things are going wrong. You're just rolling ones or whatever, or sixes when you're doing a break check or something, and it's just like, man, I can't do anything. And it's like, well... maybe something crazy's happening, and maybe it helps reframe the battle or whatever. But and that could be, and that extends beyond just miniature war games and stuff. Just any sort of, I guess, PvP player versus player anything.
Yeah, I remember fresh out of college, I was in a pickup Ultimate Frisbee League, and so we would play games, and I would get so frustrated when the other team was destroying us, which was often because we weren't that athletic.
Okay.
But it wasn't so bad that we were losing, but then they would be like, yeah, we're amazing, we're destroying you. Like, oh yeah.
Like,
and I would just get so frustrated. And I think it's a lot of those same inner feelings. And I think anytime you're in a situation like that, you have the opportunity for growth. I think that's why it's important for humans to do hard things and to put themselves in situations that aren't comfortable. And I think wargaming provides an opportunity to do that in a way. But what I found helped me in that situation was forcing myself to congratulate them on their amazing play that they just made. Even though I was really angry that they were boasting about it, I would be like, nice pass, that was really
Good
awesome.
job,
like,
dude.
Whoa, that was a great dive catch. And at first, I didn't believe it when I said it, and I was like forcing myself to say these things. But over time, it actually helped me just chill out a little bit and then not care so much. So I think, everybody has their own personality that they're going to bring to it, and their own things that are kind of triggering for them or whatever. And I think we all have our own personal responsibility to interact with that and learn from ourselves and how to become better humans to each other and better able to interact with people in community and things like that. And it's cool that wargaming can create that. I think especially when it's a kind of tight-knit group like we're developing, you can build that trust with each other and know that we're kind of all in this together for a mutually enjoyable experience.
Nobody's here to, we're all friends outside of this, or at least we hope to be, right? We're not just here doing pickup games and then like,
I can crush you and then go home and laugh about
crush
it.
You, go home and then just like, we want everybody to stick around. We want everybody to have a good time. And I think we'll get to talk about a lot of that stuff through this. But any final thoughts from you, I guess, just on who we are?
No, I think that's kind of the intro. I think hopefully that'll kick off what we're doing and what we talk about, which hopefully will be a wide array of things from, like you said, more board game style war games to the all-out...
the most gritty, crunchy miniature war games that we can find.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll try those. So hopefully listeners are excited for more too.
Yeah. So, and that wraps up Refused Flank episode 0, I suppose.
0.
The intro.
You know what? I think that's a good call. We'll call it 0.
Perfect. Yeah, because who listens to the intro episode anyways?
Yeah.
All right. Signing off.
Signing off.